Hey guys, welcome back to the BuzWeaver channel, and in our top stories today, and probably the top stories for the next several weeks, if not months, and perhaps this year. From ground news, White House expresses concerns on social media after Musk Twitter deal. President Joe Biden has long been concerned about the power of large-scale media platforms, Jen Psaki said. Twitter's board agreed to a sale to billionaire Elon Musk. Psaki wouldn't comment on what hypothetical policies might happen, such as reinstating former President Donald Trump's Twitter account, not to mention individuals like Alex Jones, Milo Yiannopoulos, Laura Lomer, and even Gavin McInnes. So we'll just have to wait and see. I might not even be able to mention those names without getting a particular demonetization here on YouTube, but I wanted to go ahead and mention them now because I think the battle is waging on, and I think we are winning. I think conservative voices, moderate voices, Green Party voices, rational, cogent, common sense thinking people, Republicans, and a few of those on the right are finally breaking through. I think when people voted for Joe Biden, they thought that maybe things would be a little different or things would improve. But you see, Orange Man Bad did a lot more than what people had anticipated because, of course, the cabal, the deep state, and or the establishment, and there's a reason why I mention it that way, wanted to make sure that Joe Biden won so that they could continue with their narrative driving. And we know that Twitter is the most woke platform on the internet. This is where all of these individuals got together to drive their narratives, to ensure that people had particular philosophies, ideologies, and worldviews that they approved of. Now, let's emphasize that. Because, of course, just even 6 years ago, if you mentioned the deep state, or if you mentioned different types of organizations, as it were, you would be considered a conspiracy theorist. So we see now from Inez Stetman, and I saw this on Tim Pool's video yesterday, and it was absolutely worth sharing. I honestly thought the system would find a way to stop Elon Musk from buying Twitter, so perhaps it's time to slightly reevaluate my intense pessimism. So there you have it. She mentions it by names in quotes because, of course, when conservatives say the system or the deep state, we are, of course, conspiracy theorists. Or perhaps if we go against the narrative of the woke culture, of the woke Twitter, we would be suspended or we would be muted or we would have our content deranked. And I found out yesterday specifically because yesterday I ended up with almost 15 followers within a matter of hours. That is very unusual. Now, I spoke to a friend of mine, a very good, dear friend of mine who is part of the trans community, and we were just talking about this whole thing, and I said, oh, and by the way, I ended up with 15 more followers on Twitter. It's amazing. I'm so happy. And they said, well, let me just check real quick, and they checked their Twitter, and their setting had been set to mute me. And they let me know that they did not set it to mute because this is someone that I know personally. This isn't an acquaintance that I met through the internet. This is someone that I personally know. Told me that I was muted on their Twitter. And it's very interesting because, yeah, yesterday was the first time I had gotten that many followers at any time that I've been on Twitter. And I've been on Twitter since day one. I've been on Twitter since 2006. I am an original Twitter user. And if you haven't already, make sure that you are following me here. So she goes on to say, all the Musk is part of the system people. Of course he is. He's not a conservative, let alone my particular stripe. And I've had trouble saying this for some reason. It's just, she doesn't write it the way people would speak, which is normally the way I would normally write things. She kind of wrote it the way people would write something. So I'm going to try it again. It's really weird. I don't know why I had so much trouble with this line. But he intends to restore free speech to this platform, and I thought that would not be tolerated under any circumstance. I had no idea why I had so much trouble with that sentence. I thought that would not be tolerated under any circumstance. I don't know. I just had some trouble with that particular sentence. Anyway, and then she goes on to say, this may be the greatest operationalization of FU money ever. This girl has got a way with words and phrasing. My goodness. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's incorrect. It's just a mouthful to try to read that sentence. Maybe it's just me. Now, of course, you guys know I do voiceover work, so I'm accustomed to having that British writing form to try to deal with as well. But I just found that fascinating. Now, I just wanted to mention, too, that I saw this yesterday on Tim Pool's video, and he also mentioned that either Mike Cernovich or Cassandra Fairbanks, and Cassandra just recently got married. I don't recall her surname now. But he mentioned, and I don't know whether it was one or the other. I tried to research it, but they said if Twitter returns to its pre-2015, pre-election stage, the Democrats are in trouble. And I would have to agree they're already in trouble, and this is why they're panicking, right? White House reiterates social media concerns, declines comment on Musk Twitter deal. They are very concerned. They are very concerned because Twitter was their narrative-driving platform. This is where the media hangs out. This is where all the people in the know, the Hollywood types, the culture people, the pop culture individuals, this is where they all hung out, on Twitter. And it's been a very, very interesting ride. And we see here from Elon himself, the extreme antibody reaction from those who fear free speech says it all. That's absolutely correct. They're afraid of free speech. Well, actually, they exaggerate and sensationalize. Look, here's Alex Jones trending. So they exaggerate and sensationalize, and they say things like, oh, well, the right just wants to be able to say the N-word on Twitter. Really? I mean, why would I, well, I'm not part of the right, although they identify me as such. Why would I want to come on Twitter and berate people and call them names to that extent, or use slurs? That's so ridiculous. I mean, there are people that do that even on some of the new tech that I belong to, but you can block those people. You can mute those people. You can, set up your settings to make sure you can't see what they're saying. But don't you find it fascinating? These individuals who in the 60s and 70s were all about free speech, marched and protested for free speech, are now anti-free speech. I mean, basically, well, they're not anti-free speech, as it were. What they are is they want to make sure that their narrative, their ideology, their philosophy, and their worldview is the most prominent. They want to make sure that they have the last word. They want to, and I see this all the time on Twitter. These people argue with me, and then we get down to the nuts and bolts, and it's all about them having the last word. Them making sure that they have the last word. But the mega woke echo chamber of Twitter has been shattered by Elon Musk. The extent of the free speech, of course, is still going to be within reasonable boundaries, like, for example, the N-word or that sort of thing. I think probably they may relax the misgendering of individuals. So say, for example, if I were to misgender my close friend, then I would be suspended on Twitter, despite the fact that they are a personal friend or someone that I know, because that is one of their policies. Now, this is something that Tim Pool brought up with Jack Dorsey and Vijaya Gotti. Vijaya Gotti is the security and safety person, or the second in line there or she's in the upper management of Twitter. And then, of course, Jack Dorsey stepped down not too long ago. But so they're concerned about it. But even more interesting, from the Washington Times, this is from yesterday, Google pauses inclusive language corrections. Oh, language correction. Google is pausing a controversial inclusive language feature that it launched this month to correct writers who type what the company deemed as politically incorrect words or phrases into its online word processor. So there we have it. If I had mentioned deep state just 5 to 6 years ago, or if I were to mention the fact that Google was changing language and creating terms, or would not allow people to use certain terms due to being politically incorrect, I would have been labeled a conspiracy theorist. So it's very interesting how things are changing. If you haven't already, guys, make sure that you're following me on Twitter now so that we can have more of a prominent voice, conservative commentary voices on Twitter, as well as here on YouTube. So if you haven't already, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe. And to all of you guys on New Tech, Rumble, Odyssey, and BitChute, I want to thank all of you guys for your continued support. And of course, this is what I have for you this Tuesday. And for all of you here on the YouTubes, that would be the channel icon appearing right there on the screen. You can click on that to subscribe, as well as notifications. And I will see you guys in the next video.